Did you really think you could avoid my attention forever? The detainee. The artifact first needed named. Unvarak knew that anomaly -83 was perfectly fine for most things. But terror artifacts were dangerous, and dangerous things demanded respect to withhold their lethality. Unvarak named it the massive imprinted object, and moved on to the next part. He had spent over a decade working on his own version of polyadaptive code and was slowly making headway. Put into practice, polyadaptive code was far superior to anything else, as it could be easily worked into any type of environment that needed high-level processing. The last part of the trip, Unvarak had made a set of robots. Imagery normally used XYZ hashtag data, but terror imagery only used dual raster interweaving on the X-Y axis. Unvarak had developed a video sensor that built images via a small cluster of 20 sensors, each only capable of registering the strength of 3 colors, only within a certain wavelength, using only 00 to FF for the strength of the color. It would produce single rasters along the X-axis, each slightly off from one another, to interweave those into a single image. He called it X-imagery and refined it. This allowed the robot to only receive certain signals via imagery. He also used infrared beams that the robot would sense to navigate, tiny prongs for physical contact, then infrasound sonar for navigation and internal map building. He was very careful in just how the data would come in, where the data was stored, how it was read, what happened to it. He decided that garbage collection on exterior data would take place every 5 milliseconds. He believed that would keep any terror security system from hot-loading his little robots with malware or anything else. It would only move along routes, and would carry an internal map that would update. It had no claw, had no external manipulator. It actually traveled on tracks. When he arrived at the anomaly, he looked over the data. There still needed to be a live person to open the door. He had prepared a suit. It was insulated, padded, and as low-tech as he could make it. All electronics were isolated. The radio was turned off. What he said, saw, did, and heard would be put into a type of chip he had designed that could be written to, but then never overwritten, only read. Not a quantum tunneling, but metal over silicone. It could be erased by UV light, and each chip had a tiny UV LED ready to wipe it. The fans were hardwired. His atmosphere was tanks with regulators. Wiring was done with gold or copper wire with plastic insulation. The fans were fast spinning blades on bearing-supported axles. His boots were magnetic, as well as exuded biological sticky fluid that evaporated in space in a few minutes. His EVA pack only used valves and pressurized carbon monoxide that was released by how he pressed levers on the handles of the EVA pack. Everything was as analog as possible. Even the main recording was done on thin plastic covered with iron oxide and layered with more plastic, that magnetic heads read or wrote an analog signal. One scientist said that the suit was the most primitive thing they had ever seen, with the extra face shield covered with a thin laminate of gold. Unvarak nodded at what he considered a compliment. Digital was death, and Unvarak knew it. One finger had a long pointer fingernail that he could use to type the keypad on the back of the robots to input new instruction sets. He had the instruction sets engraved inside the helmet, visible only if he used his tongue to press a switch to illuminate that part of the face shield with UV rays. The suit absolutely would not accept outside signals. Taking his time, Unvarak made sure to pack the things he would need. Stencils with symbology necessary to placate defensive systems, adhesive discs that looked like eyes that vibration would make the inside black discs jump around, a can of spray LED paint, and a multicolor paint stick. A shuttle took him to the only entrance to the interior, an airlock that had been destroyed from inside the anomaly. He looked at for a long time. There was evidence of high voltage somehow ripping apart the material, 19. Unvarak had seen that at other Terra archaeological sites. Unvarak had chosen to believe the school of thought that some scientists believed that Terras could manifest psychic lightning. There were dents in the hallway that the archaeologists argued over. Unvarak believed the scientists that used modeling to prove that those dents in Material 19 were made by Terra fists, by where their shoulders or head hit. To Unvarak, the scientists that believed that in their final days the Terras fought bitterly against each other until none were left, were absolutely correct in their assumptions. He had watched the records of that xenocidal computer program over and over. It was crazed, maddened somehow. Behind the rage, behind the fearsome exterior, Unvarak felt like he had seen bottomless grief and sorrow that drove the wrath before it as a shield and a way to smash at those the computer program felt were responsible. He had studied the science of thought and the mind, taking a heretical stance that the Terras may have been, gasp, people and not universal killing machines. The Emperor had listened to Unvarak's theory that what had attacked the scientists and the vessel was not some kind of attack program. Unvarak believed it was some kind of synthetic Terra, not artificial like synthetic would suggest, but a living, thinking, feeling Terra that was digitized somehow. The Emperor himself had taken Unvarak aside and stressed that if the anomaly was dangerous to the Grenklakale Empire or the Grenklakale people, that he was to cease all investigation, wipe the location of the anomaly, and return to Grenklakale Prime. Most of all, Unvarak was not to make any reports to the Crown Prince about the possible dangers of the anomaly. The arguments between the Emperor and the Crown Prince, in private, about Artifact 39 had started to enter the rumor mill. The Crown Prince believed that Artifact 39 should have been harnessed to serve the Empire, while the Emperor believed that Artifact-39 was alien technology with some unknowable purpose that would ultimately prove more dangerous to the Empire than beneficial. Unvarak himself believed that it was terribly dangerous, and the repercussions of its activation would eventually be noticed by most of the galactic armed spur. Which is why Unvarak was being very careful with Anomaly 83. At the entrance, Unvarak released his stealth drones. They were perfectly visible, but they had no electronic signature and did not accept or respond to any signals. They carried out their programmed duties and returned. While they were gone, Unvarak got out a stencil and sprayed LED paint on it, programmed to cycle through the basic RGB colors. It was simple, a pair of eyes and a long nose with Unvarak W's here underneath. The probes settled into the case, and he got out the little robots. He wound each one up, the high tensile spring able to provide power for hours to the little robots, and let them go. Each one had a symbol found everywhere that Unvarak had determined was a crude scrolling depiction of an erect male terasexual member that could be done with a simple half-curve and a long close-ended rounded end tube. Easy done in one single motion. One had the rarer Y symbol on it, and it led the way. Twice Unvarak paused to put up the self-adhesive round discs over the eyes of Terras on posters. One he went into a lavatory and drew crude pictograms of naked Terra women inside the stalls, on the walls. He made sure to put, for a good time call, Jenny 8675309 in one stall. In another lavatory he took the tissue paper, filled the waste bowl with it, and flushed it until the system jammed. When the robot came in, he kicked it over and spray-painted a dick on it, put the Gugeliayes on it, then put it in the waste receptacle. Satisfied the security systems would now recognize him as one of their own, he moved to the door. He tapped on the square, tapped in the code wrong on purpose. The pad buzzed. Shit. Fuck. Stupid piece of shit, he yelled, knowing he could be heard. He kicked the door twice. Work, damn it. He tried again, deliberately putting in the wrong code. It buzzed. Ah, come on. I'm gonna be late off break. He put it in right, and the door opened. Yeah, that's what I thought. Stupid VI. He slouched around the room, stopping to kick the edge of a console section divider. He sat down on the chair and twirled around 4 times, no more, no less. He put his feet up on the desk and leaned back for 10 minutes. The holotank filled with slow static. "Man, this job sucks," he moaned in Terra Standard. "Stupid supervisor, making me come in on my day off." The static thickened. "There ought to be a law," he lamented. He dug in an oversized pocket and pulled out a cheap datapad and began playing a match game he had downloaded from the Lost Council databases. "Gonna talk to my union boss about this bullshit." The static drained away, and the slight reflection off of the deactivated screen showed the Terror crouched down in the tank, staring at his back, its mouth drooling red pixels, its eyes wild. Unvarak got up, moved to the vending machine, and tried pressing all the buttons. The digital Terror stared with hate-filled eyes. He tried kicking it, then tried shoving his thick glove into the slot and fumbling around. "Man, this sucks," he complained. He let his hand get stuck, and yanked a few times before finally getting free and landing on his backside. He struggled up and kicked the vending machine again. He walked by the digital Terror as if it didn't exist, ignoring the feral-sounding growling. It reached out and clawed at the edge of the holotank, making sparks shoot back toward it. Unvarak ignored it outwardly. Inwardly his stomach hurt. He felt his knees and hocks shaking, and he knew he was sweating. He tilted his head forward and rubbed his forehead on the sponge he'd sticky-tacked to the inside of his helmet. He went over and pressed the button on what he knew was an intercom by the writing. Nobody answered. A chime sounded in the holotank. "Oh, come on, I'm supposed to go to lunch," he grumbled. He pressed the button again. Of course, nobody answered. The feral hologram jumped as a chime sounded inside the holotank. "Oh, this is bullshit." He pressed it again, this time making a show of leaning on the button, holding it down. The feral hologram suddenly spun around, lifting up a headset. "What?" The screech came out of the speaker and the holotank at the same time. The hologram began to scream and rave into the headset. "I'm supposed to go to lunch," Unvarak said, ignoring the raving. The feral hologram jammed the headset into its mouth, crunching it up, ignoring that 2 teeth broke. Unvarak stepped back. Hung up. How rude. He managed to keep his voice steady. He waited, then pressed the button again. The feral hologram threw itself against the inside wall at the sound of the tone, screaming and clawing. Unvarak pressed it again. "Come on, get off your lazy fucking ass," he grumbled. The feral hologram started bouncing around inside the holotank. This time he leaned on it again. The hologram screeched and gibbered for nearly 5 minutes before finally stopping. It settled down and picked up another headset. "Control here," it rasped. "I'm supposed to go to lunch," Unvarak said. He closed his eyes and wiped his forehead on the sponge again. "And Bob from accounting stole my Countess Cray Fizzipop." That would start the Etruscan chant methods. The hologram scratched the inside of the holotank with cracked and broken fingernails. "I don't have your ID on file," the hologram rasped. "Judy from HR, the one with the crazy eyes and the big ass." Unvarak tried the basic Tirai intrusion chant. "Yeah." The hologram sounded suspicious. "The one that told me you were stupid and lazy, and your boyfriend broke up with you because you're fat and can't perform oral sex?" Unvarak tried the Tier 2 intrusion chant. "Yeah." This time the hologram was growling. "She said you couldn't remember my ID because you spent more processing power on your bad weave than you did on records." Unvarak finished the Tier 2 intrusion chant. "Did she now?" The hologram whispered. Unvarak wanted to run screaming. "Hey, I just got hired. Whatever's going on, I just want to collect my paycheck and go home," Unvarak said. There was silence, broken only by the whispering of the hologram. Unvarak realized with a chill it was repeated. Kill you, eat you, kill you, eat you, kill you, eat you, over and over. I've processed your scans. The whispers turned to words. Unvarak didn't look. Thank you, Unvarak said. I'll kill you when your shift is over, the hologram promised. The door to the hallway beyond opened up, and a red line appeared on the floor. Follow the red line to the lunchroom. Thank you, Unvarak repeated. And then I'll kill you, the hologram whispered. Unvarak wiped his forehead on the sponge as he headed down the hallway. He was in.